Sometimes it all comes down to a single choice, not 10, not 100, one. And that one decision can completely redefine where your life is headed. Most people think transformation is complicated, but the truth is, it starts with a moment of courage. A moment where you stop letting fear dictate your next move. A moment where you say, enough is enough. Think about it. Every achievement you admire in someone else started with one bold decision: to start, to commit, to risk, to take action even when it felt uncomfortable. And that's the piece most people miss. You don't need to have the entire path figured out. You just need to make the decision that sets you in motion. The problem is we wait. We wait for the right time, the right resources, the right support, the perfect plan. But let's be honest, waiting is just a fancy word for avoiding. The longer you delay that decision, the more you train yourself to settle. And settling is the fastest way to kill your potential. So, what's that decision for you? Maybe it's quitting an excuse. Maybe it's committing to your health. Maybe it's starting the business you've been talking about for years. Or maybe it's just deciding to stop letting fear drive your choices. Whatever it is, I promise you this: the second you make it, your future changes instantly. You don't need permission. You don't need certainty. You need courage, and courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you act in spite of the fear. Because every breakthrough in your life will come from that one moment you choose action over hesitation. So today, I'm challenging you. Make the decision. Don't think about it. Don't talk about it. Do it. One decision. That's all it takes to redefine your future. And years from now, you'll look back and realize that this single choice was the turning point where everything began to shift. When we talk about transformation, most people immediately picture a long journey filled with countless steps, massive resources, and years of hard work. And yes, all of those things can play a role in shaping a meaningful life. But the truth that often gets overlooked is that transformation doesn't begin with hundreds of actions. It starts with one bold choice. That single decision is like a spark. It may seem small in the moment, but it has the power to ignite an entirely new direction in your life. Think about moments in history, or even in your own life, where everything changed. It wasn't because someone mapped out every detail of the future. It was because in one defining moment they made a choice. A student decides to go after a scholarship. A professional finally decides to leave a job that drains them. A parent decides to break a generational pattern. These are not complicated plans, they are choices, and those choices open doors to paths that were invisible before. The reason one bold choice is so powerful is because it sets momentum in motion. Imagine standing at a crossroads. Until you decide which direction to take, you're stuck in place. The second you commit, the path ahead starts to unfold. That doesn't mean you'll see the whole journey at once, but it does mean you're no longer paralyzed by indecision. And that first move creates energy, focus, and clarity that you simply cannot access until you've chosen. The problem for most people is that they underestimate the weight of their own decisions. They believe that unless it's a huge, dramatic shift, it doesn't matter. But the truth is, small decisions compound. Saying yes when fear tells you to say no, showing up when you'd rather stay hidden, choosing growth instead of comfort. These are bold choices too. They may not look dramatic to the outside world, but inside, they are the turning points that shape who you are becoming. It's also important to understand that boldness doesn't always mean flashy or extreme. Boldness is deeply personal. For someone who's always played it safe, a bold choice could be speaking up in a meeting. For someone who's lived in fear, a bold choice could be asking for help. And for someone who's been stuck in excuses, a bold choice could be finally taking ownership of their life. The magnitude of the decision is not measured by how others see it. It's measured by how much it challenges you to step into a greater version of yourself. Every bold choice is also an act of self-trust. When you make a decision that scares you, you're telling yourself, I believe I can handle what comes next. That belief is what separates people who grow from those who stay stuck. Without self-trust, you'll hesitate, stall, and talk yourself out of opportunities. With self-trust, you'll take the leap even when you don't have all the answers, and that leap is the birthplace of transformation. So if you're waiting for a moment where the stars align, or for a perfect plan to appear, you'll keep standing still. The truth is, Your life changes the second you decide it will. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. And it doesn't take 1,000 choices to shift your path. It takes one. One decision to step forward, one decision to stop settling, one decision to choose courage over comfort. That's where transformation begins, always with one bold choice. Waiting is one of the greatest illusions we fall into when it comes to building the life we want. We convince ourselves that the timing isn't right, that we don't have enough money, that we need more experience, or that we'll be ready once a certain event happens. But the truth is, waiting is nothing more than a delay tactic we disguise as preparation. It feels safer to sit back and say, "I'll start when I'm ready," than it does to admit, "I'm scared to begin." The problem is that while you're waiting, life is still moving forward. Opportunities are passing by, time is slipping away, and the window for change becomes smaller and smaller. Every person who has ever achieved something remarkable will tell you that they didn't start because everything was perfect. They started because they refused to wait any longer. They understood that progress doesn't come from a perfect plan. It comes from taking the first imperfect step. The act of waiting doesn't bring you closer to your goal. In fact, it creates the opposite effect. The more you wait, the heavier the decision becomes. Procrastination doesn't lighten the weight of fear, it strengthens it. Each day you hold back, your confidence decreases, your doubts multiply, and you begin to question whether the change is even possible. We trick ourselves into believing that waiting is wise. We say things like, "I'm being cautious," or "I'm planning carefully," when in reality we're hiding behind excuses. Deep down, we know there will never be a perfect time. Life will always be messy, uncertain, and unpredictable. Waiting for ideal circumstances is like waiting for a ship that never arrives. The truth is, circumstances don't become perfect and then allow us to act. Instead, it's action that transforms circumstances. Action is what creates readiness, builds experience, and generates momentum. Think of someone standing on the edge of a swimming pool, waiting for the water to feel warm enough to jump in. They dip their toe in, step back, and hesitate. Meanwhile, the people who actually jumped are already swimming, adjusting, and enjoying the water. That's the difference between waiting and acting. Waiting gives you more reasons to hold back, while acting gives you more reasons to keep going. Momentum only comes to those who move. The other problem with waiting is that it trains your brain to settle. Every time you delay a decision, you reinforce the habit of putting your dreams second. You begin to normalize hesitation, and hesitation slowly becomes your identity. On the other hand, when you make a choice to act despite the uncertainty, you train your brain to see yourself as capable, decisive, and resilient. This identity shift is what allows you to grow beyond your comfort zone and step into bigger opportunities. If you look back at the moments in your life where you felt the most alive or proud, chances are they didn't happen after months of waiting. They happened in the moments where you made a move without knowing the outcome. That job you applied for without knowing if you'd be accepted, that conversation you initiated without knowing how it would end, that risk you took without guarantees, all of those moments shaped you. They didn't require waiting, they required courage, and courage will always take you further than waiting ever could. Most of us spend too much time believing that we need certainty before we take action. We want a guarantee that things will work out, that we won't make mistakes, that the path will be smooth. But the reality is, certainty is an illusion. Life doesn't give us maps with every step clearly drawn. It gives us a starting point and asks us to move. And that's why action matters more than certainty. The people who create real change in their lives aren't the ones who waited for clarity. They're the ones who acted in spite of the unknown. Think about it. When you're standing at the bottom of a staircase, you don't need to see every step to start climbing. You just need to take the first one. That first action leads you to the next and the next until the full path reveals itself. But if you stand there frozen, demanding to see the whole staircase before moving, you'll stay stuck in the same spot forever. This is what happens when we prioritize certainty over action. We give power to hesitation, and in doing so, we deny ourselves the chance to grow. The truth is, clarity is a result of action, not a prerequisite for it. You only discover what works and what doesn't by trying. You only figure out what you want by moving towards something, testing, adjusting, and learning as you go. No one builds confidence sitting on the sidelines. Confidence is built through repetition, through taking risks, and through seeing yourself handle situations you once thought were impossible. When you take action, even small action, you prove to yourself that you are capable. That proof is worth far more than the false comfort of waiting for certainty. Another thing to realize is that action itself changes your perspective. When you move, you gain feedback. You learn what steps are effective, what obstacles exist, and what resources you'll need along the way. That feedback is what eventually gives you clarity. On the other hand, when you demand certainty before moving, you rob yourself of the chance to collect that information. It's like refusing to start a puzzle because you can't see the final picture. The act of putting pieces together is the only way the full image emerges. So often, people look at successful individuals and assume they knew what they were doing from the start. But if you ask them, most will admit they had no idea how things would unfold. What they did have was the willingness to act. They decided that progress was more valuable than perfection. They were willing to fail, to adjust, and to keep moving forward. That mindset is what created their results, not certainty, but courage to act without it. It's also important to remember that inaction has a cost. By waiting for certainty, you may feel safe in the short term, but in the long term, you pay the price of regret. You lose years to hesitation, years you could have spent building, learning, and growing. Taking action may not always give you the outcome you imagined, but it always gives you experience and growth is never wasted. So the next time you find yourself waiting for everything to make sense, remind yourself that the path doesn't appear until you start walking. You don't need certainty to act, you need action to create certainty. The first step will always feel uncertain, but it's the one step that begins to change everything. Courage is often misunderstood. People think courage means being fearless, as if those who are courageous somehow have an immunity to doubt, anxiety, or hesitation. But that's not the truth. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the decision to act even when fear is loud in your mind. Every single person who has ever achieved something meaningful has felt fear. They've questioned themselves, doubted their abilities, and wondered whether they were making the right choice. The difference is, they didn't let those feelings stop them. They acted in spite of them. That is what makes courage the true catalyst for transformation. Fear is wired into us for survival, but most of the time it doesn't signal real danger. It signals discomfort. And discomfort is not something to avoid, it's something to lean into. Discomfort is the sign that you're stretching beyond your limits, pushing yourself into growth, and challenging the boundaries of what you thought you were capable of. Courage means deciding that your desire to grow is stronger than your desire to stay safe. It means choosing progress over comfort, even when it feels uncertain. When you look back at the most defining moments of your life, chances are they weren't easy. They were moments where you stood on the edge of something unfamiliar, and your heart was pounding, your hands were shaking, and every part of you wanted to retreat to safety. But when you stepped forward anyway, something inside you shifted. You discovered strength you didn't know you had. That is the power of courage. It reveals hidden potential that only emerges when you face the things that scare you. Courage also builds resilience. The first time you act in the face of fear, it feels almost impossible. But every time you do it, you train your mind and body to handle discomfort. You learn that fear isn't fatal, that uncertainty won't destroy you, and that failure doesn't define you. Each act of courage becomes a deposit in your confidence account, proof that you can handle more than you thought. Over time, this resilience becomes part of who you are, and challenges that once terrified you begin to look like opportunities. Another reason courage is the catalyst for transformation is that it sets things in motion. Fear keeps you stuck in hesitation, replaying scenarios in your mind, endlessly analyzing what could go wrong. Courage, on the other hand, pushes you into action, and action is the only thing that creates results. You can't think your way into a new life, you have to act your way into one. The bold decision, the leap into the unknown, the step forward when you don't feel ready. That is the spark that redefines your future. It's also worth noting that courage is contagious. When you choose to act courageously, You inspire others to do the same. People see your example and realize they don't have to be fearless either. They just have to be willing. This ripple effect spreads further than you imagine. And sometimes your single act of courage can be the reason someone else decides to take their own leap. Fear will never completely go away, but you don't need it to. What you need is the awareness that fear doesn't have to control you. It can exist in the background while you still choose to move forward. Courage is the muscle that grows stronger every time you use it. And the more you choose courage, the more you realize that your future is not defined by fear, it's defined by your willingness to act despite it. Every person reaches a moment in life where they realize things cannot continue the way they are. It might come as a quiet whisper inside or as a loud wake-up call triggered by failure, disappointment, or frustration. That moment is what we call a turning point, and what's powerful about it is that it doesn't require a grand plan or a lifetime of preparation. It requires a single choice. The decision you make today can become the very pivot that shifts your entire future. Too often, people imagine their lives changing in huge, dramatic ways, winning the lottery, landing the perfect job, or stumbling upon the ideal opportunity. But real turning points rarely look like that. They usually begin with something small but powerful. The day you decide to stop making excuses, the moment you choose to believe in your own potential, or the instant you stop tolerating less than you deserve. That one decision marks the beginning of a new chapter, and everything that follows flows from it. The beauty of a turning point is that it doesn't erase your past, it redefines it. Every struggle you've faced, every setback you've endured, and every mistake you've made suddenly become lessons, fuel for your new direction. What once felt like wasted time transforms into experience that equips you for the journey ahead. But this shift only happens when you decide to stop being a passive character in your story and start being the author of it. It's easy to assume that a turning point will arrive on its own, like some magical event that drops out of the sky. But in reality, turning points are created. They are born in the exact moment you choose to act differently than you have before. They come from saying yes when you normally say no, from walking away when you normally stay, from standing tall when you normally shrink. And the truth is, you hold the power to create that moment at any time. Right now, even as you're reading this, you can decide that this is it, the point where your life begins to shift. What's important to remember is that turning points don't require perfection. You don't need to have all the answers, all the resources, or all the confidence. You only need to be willing. The smallest action taken with intention is more powerful than the biggest dream kept in silence. Once you make that choice, the energy around you begins to shift. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly come into view. People who can help you seem to appear at the right time. This isn't coincidence. It's the natural result of aligning your actions with your intentions. And while a turning point is often sparked by one decision, the impact of that decision is lifelong. Years from now, you may look back and realize that everything changed on the day you finally chose yourself, the day you decided to move forward despite fear, or the day you stopped waiting for permission. That reflection will remind you that the future isn't built by luck or chance. It's built by bold choices made in pivotal moments. In the end, remember that your future is not shaped by luck, nor by chance, but by the choices you dare to make in the present moment. One decision has the power to shift your direction, break your limits, and awaken the potential that's been waiting inside you all along. Do not wait for the perfect time, do not wait for certainty, and do not wait for someone else's approval. Your turning point begins the moment you choose courage over fear and action over hesitation. Thank you for your time, your presence, and your willingness to open your heart and mind today. May this message stay with you as a reminder that the future you dream of begins with the decision you make right now.